Why is she here? Daniel's smile stiffened as the ballroom froze. His beauty queen fiancée tightened her grip on his arm, her crown suddenly feeling like a weight. Cameras clicked, whispers spread. And then the shock. Amara walked in, radiant, her quiet confidence echoing louder than any spotlight. At her side was the man no one expected, the billionaire sponsor who had built Serena's career. In that instant, Daniel's staged performance crumbled before the world. This is the untold story of arrogance shattered and dignity reclaimed. Comment your city below if you're watching. We want to see where our story travels. Amara had built her life on resilience. A black woman in her mid-30s, she carried herself with a quiet grace that spoke of battles fought and survived. By day, she worked as a communications strategist, a career she had carved out from long hours and unshakable determination. By night, she found peace in her small but warm apartment, plants in every corner, jazz records stacked near the window, and the scent of fresh coffee that lingered even after sundown. To those who met her, she appeared calm, grounded, untouchable. But the truth was, scars lay beneath the surface. Her ex-husband, Daniel, had been a wound that once cut deep. He was handsome, smooth-talking, and white, charming enough to captivate crowds, cruel enough to diminish her behind closed doors. Their marriage had been brief but intense, a lesson in how love can sour when tainted by arrogance and entitlement. Amara had walked away, choosing freedom over the prison of his ego. She rebuilt from nothing, redefining her worth not by what he took, but by what she could create. And she succeeded. Slowly, steadily, she crafted a life defined by independence and dignity, far removed from his shadow. But shadows have a way of returning. One evening, as Amara scrolled through her phone, a headline caught her eye. There he was, Daniel, grinning wide beside a beauty queen fiancée, paraded as if she were a trophy. The images weren't just celebratory. They were pointed, dripping with the kind of arrogance that Amara knew too well. Beneath the smiles, she could see his intent, a performance staged for her to remind her of what she had lost. She sighed, not out of envy, but out of recognition. She had expected peace after him, but Daniel thrived on spectacle. And his new chapter seemed determined to pull her name back into his show. What he didn't know, what no one knew, was that Amara was no longer playing the role he had written for her. The stage had shifted, and soon the spotlight would turn in a direction he never imagined. The weeks that followed were thick with reminders of Daniel's performance. Social media was flooded with carefully staged photographs, his arm draped over his fiancée, their smiles polished to perfection. News outlets amplified the story of the fairy tale couple. The former accountant turned beauty queen and the ambitious entrepreneur who had finally found happiness. For Amara, the message was clear. Daniel wasn't just celebrating. He was sending a signal, broadcasting a life designed to mock her. She had once been the quiet wife standing behind him. Now he wanted the world to see her as the forgotten past, left behind for someone younger, lighter, and seemingly more glamorous. And yet, Amara didn't flinch. Behind the scenes, her own life had shifted in ways Daniel could never have predicted. Through her work, she had crossed paths with influential figures, leaders in business, media, and philanthropy. Among them was Adrian Cole, a billionaire with an understated presence. Where Daniel relied on arrogance to command attention, Adrian's power came from silence, patience, and generosity. Over time, a bond formed, not built on showmanship, but on trust and respect. Still, Daniel remained convinced of his dominance. At a charity gala scheduled downtown, Amara's name appeared quietly among the guest list. It was the kind of event Daniel adored, cameras flashing, reporters circling, champagne glasses lifted in rehearsed toasts. He had personally ensured that his fiancée, Serena, would sparkle in the spotlight, her sequined gown chosen to dazzle, her crown tilted just so. When Daniel spotted Amara's name, he smirked. This was his chance. He pictured her walking in, alone, head lowered, her confidence shattered by the glow of Serena's crown. He rehearsed in his mind how he would introduce his fiancée, how he would watch Amara's face tighten with envy. For Daniel, the gala wasn't about charity. It was about theater. Amara knew this too. She had been married to him long enough to understand how he thought, how he schemed. And so, as the night approached, she prepared herself, not with revenge in her heart, but with the kind of calm strength Daniel had never understood. She chose a gown not for attention, but for elegance. She carried herself not as a rival, but as a woman who no longer needed to compete. The night of the gala shimmered with extravagance. Flashbulbs popped as Serena descended from Daniel's car, her beauty queen poise perfected for the cameras. Daniel soaked in the attention, his laughter echoing through the marble halls as he shook hands and posed for photographs. All the while, he scanned the crowd, waiting, and then she arrived. Amara stepped into the ballroom, her presence quiet yet undeniable. Conversation softened, eyes turned. She didn't rush, didn't falter. But what silenced the room wasn't just her grace, it was the man at her side, Adrian Cole. The billionaire whose sponsorship had propelled Serena's career walked with Amara, his hand resting lightly at her back. Their connection was effortless, unforced. It was the kind of partnership money couldn't manufacture, built on respect, not performance. Daniel's smile froze. The stage he had so carefully set began to crack. Whispers spread quickly across the ballroom. Reporters exchanged glances. Serena's confidence faltered, her crown suddenly heavier on her head. In that moment, the balance of power shifted. Daniel, who had come to flaunt, found himself cornered by a truth he could neither script nor control, and Amara, once the woman he thought he had broken, stood unshaken, her quiet triumph unfolding beneath the glittering chandeliers. Daniel's voice faltered the moment he tried to introduce Serena to the nearby guests. His usual swagger slipped, the words catching in his throat as all eyes shifted, not to him, not even to Serena, but to Amara and Adrian gliding through the room as though they belonged to every corner of it. The whispers grew louder, now unmistakable. "Isn't that Adrian Cole?" "But he's Serena's sponsor." "What's going on here?" Reporters angled their cameras, sensing a story bigger than the gala itself. Daniel clenched his glass so tightly it threatened to shatter. His fiancée's practiced smile trembled as she glanced nervously at the man whose financial support had elevated her career. Adrian, calm and collected, greeted acquaintances with a nod before pulling out a chair for Amara, a deliberate, intimate, and intensely public gesture. In that moment, Daniel realized the performance was no longer his. His attempt to humiliate had backfired spectacularly. The narrative he'd spent months constructing of a discarded ex-wife and a flawless new beginning was unraveling before the cameras. Amara didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Her silence was more devastating than any words could be. While Daniel squirmed in the glare of the lights, she sat poised, radiant, untouchable. The same woman he had once tried to reduce was now elevated higher than he could ever reach. The crowd watched, hushed, as Daniel's arrogance dissolved into humiliation. And in that ballroom, beneath the chandeliers, the story of who had truly won was no longer his to tell. As the night wore on, Daniel's laughter grew hollow, his gestures forced. Every time he tried to reclaim attention, the room drifted back toward Amara and Adrian. The cameras lingered on her calm smile, her effortless elegance, and the quiet power she radiated. For the first time in his life, Daniel was invisible. Serena shifted uncomfortably at his side. What had once been her moment of triumph now felt like exposure. The whispers surrounding her sponsor and Amara grew heavier, and the weight of Daniel's arrogance pressed down on them both. But Amara did not revel in their discomfort. She had no need to. Her victory was not in their downfall. It was in her freedom, her dignity, and her refusal to let her worth be defined by comparison. She had walked through humiliation, endured belittlement, and risen into a life where she no longer had to explain or prove herself. The beauty of that night was not that Daniel was humiliated, but that Amara stood unbroken. She represented something larger, the resilience of women who are underestimated, the strength of those forced to bear injustice quietly, and the truth that dignity cannot be stripped away by arrogance. For those watching, it wasn't just gossip, it was a lesson. Power built on cruelty always collapses, while respect and authenticity endure. And so, as the ballroom lights dimmed, Amara walked away, not just with Adrian, but with a story rewritten. Her silence had spoken louder than Daniel's endless boasting ever could. The question remains for all of us. How many more Amaras will the world dismiss before recognizing their strength? Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more powerful stories. And dear viewers, what city are you watching from today? Drop it in the comments!